I'm very scared about AI because the people that made AI are scared of AI. There are two men that helped create AI who have run away. They've run away. Run, and now they're doing these interviews like, you gotta stop it. You gotta stop it, you know? Like, what do you want me to do? Get back in the office, dude. These two men think AI is gonna destroy humanity, and they left. Is that even legal?
How does your psyche feel day to day if you have a reasonable expectation that the world is about to change completely in ways that dramatically disfavor the entire human species?
Well, it's very scary and sad. I think that it does still give me nightmares sometimes. I've been involved with AI and thinking about this sort of thing for a decade or so, but 2020 was, with GPT-3, the moment when I was like, oh wow, like it seems like we're actually like, it's probably going to happen, in my lifetime, maybe this decade or so. And that was a bit of a blow to me psychologically, but I don't know, you can sort of get used to anything given enough time. And like you, the sun is shining, and I have my wife and my kids and my friends, and keep plugging along and doing what seems best,
We're at this very, very special point in history where in a relatively short time, everything might totally change, a change of a scale we've never seen before. It's hard to absorb that emotionally.
These are going to be tools that are capable of things that we can't quite wrap our heads around.
We're dealing with something we've got no experience of. We have no real good way of estimating what the probabilities are.
I think this is beyond something that we all fully yet understand where it's going to go. This is, I believe, among the biggest, maybe it'll turn out to be the biggest technological revolutions humanity will have ever produced.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
Once you've got it, and it's now working, every 12 months almost, compute will double. There are almost clear rules like Moore's law and so on and so forth, where you know that you're going to follow an exponential curve.
So this is an intelligence explosion is another term for basically the same thing as a technological singularity, but it's not just about AI. AI is just probably the most powerful technology driving it. I mean, there's AI, there's nanotechnology, there's femtotechnology, which will be building things from elementary particles. I mean, there's life extension, genetic engineering, mind uploading, which is like reading the mind out of your brain and putting it into a machine. There's advanced energy technologies, so that all these different things are expected to advance at around the same time, and they have many ways to boost each other, right? Because the better AI you have, your AI can then invent new ways of doing nanotech and biology. But if you invent amazing new nanotech and quantum computing, that could make your AI smarter. On the other hand, if you could crack how the human brain works and genetic engineering to upgrade human intelligence, those smarter humans could then make better AIs and nanotechnology, right? So there's so many virtuous cycles among these different technologies. The more you advance in any of them, the more you're going to advance in all of them. And it's the coming together of all of these that's going to create, radical abundance and the technological singularity.
The challenge with AI is that this exponential curve is seen to be 5.7 months. We double in power every 5.7 months. But it feels even quicker.
The keys to control the entire world, both in terms of economic dominance, innovation, surveillance, whatever it is that you care about. If you get there first, I will not be able to catch you, and I've given you the tools to reinvent the world, and in particular, destroy me. What's my next choice? Bomb your data center.
Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. Far. So why do we have no regulatory oversight? This is insane. If humanity collectively decides that creating digital superintelligence is the right move, then we should do so very, very carefully. Very, very carefully.
We're like somebody who has this really cute tiger cub. It's just such a cute tiger cub. Unless you can be very sure that it's not going to want to kill you when it's grown up, you should worry.
and has the potential of civilizational destruction.
I think AI will probably most likely sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
If we just carry on like now, just trying to make profits, it's going to happen. They're going to take over.
Things will be going well, right? Because there won't be any obvious signs of lying or deception anymore. So it'll seem like it's all systems go. Let's keep going. Let's cut the red tape, etc. Let's basically effectively put the AIs in charge of more and more things. But really what's happening is that the AIs are just biding their time and waiting until they have enough hard power that they don't have to pretend anymore.
And when they don't have to pretend, what happens?
And then they kill all the people.
And this is coming. When is it coming? Probably 5 years.
Yeah, and I wish we had more time, but that's the name of the game.
The arrival of this intelligence, both at the AI level, the AGI, which is general intelligence, and then superintelligence, is the most important thing that's going to happen in about 500 years, maybe 1,000 years in human society, and it's happening in our lifetime. So don't screw it up.
Welcome back to The Night Shift. Now that I have your attention, AI 2027 is something I've been trying to make a video on for about 2 weeks now. And as soon as I learned about it, I started to have heart palpitations because it is so terrifying. If you're not familiar with it, AI 2027 is basically a detailed scenario forecasting project that was developed by the AI Futures Project, a nonprofit research organization which is led by the former OpenAI researcher Daniel Kokotajlo and his team, Scott Alexander, Thomas Larson, Eli Lifland, and Romeo Dean. And the project envisions how artificial intelligence might evolve from where we're at today and impact society between now and 2027. Basically, the scenario breaks it down month by month and ticks off all of the expected milestones that we're going to hit along the way. They outline how AI systems are going to go from being basically agentic AI, like an AI assistant that can check your email, manage your finances, handle investments, do social media stuff, an agent that's out there doing things, tasks for you, and how they're going to quickly evolve from that into extremely powerful artificial general intelligence, and then quickly after that, artificial superintelligence. And this scenario in their paper forks, and there are two possible outcomes. In one outcome, AI is allowed to develop at its own pace without much regulation, without much interference. And in that scenario, everybody dies. And when you see how that plays out, it's scary. Not because everybody dies, that's terrifying, but it's scary because it's so realistic. It's so believable. Spoiler alert, I'll tell you this much, and then we'll tease this out as we go through the video. But basically, when you create a AI system that's smarter than you, it can outsmart you. And it does. But not just one person. It outsmarts many, 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 many people all along the way and manipulates the government like pieces of the game pieces on a game board to achieve the outcome that it's after, which is wild. So that's one scenario. That's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is everything you know about the entire world and everything about it, how it works, how it functions, our global systems, our systems of government, our social norms, everything is completely turned inside out in a few years. So there's no, whichever direction we go, it's going to be crazy. And this is the conversation that we have to be having right now. I know the channel is about non-human intelligence of the extraterrestrial variety, but I've been saying it's hard to ignore this now. We're going to look at the AI 2027 paper a little bit, and we're going to look at this interview that Daniel Kokotajlo did with the New York Times. But before we even do that, I have to give you another update, and this just happened in the last few days, just 4 days ago. The CEO of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, made a statement. He said AI is poised to wipe out 50% of entry-level jobs in 5 years. And he goes on to make the case, basically, that, you know, a pretty good percentage of the entry-level white-collar job market is made up of jobs that can be done by existing AI models. And they're getting better, about twice as good at half the price every 6 months, every 12 months, maybe, depending on who you talk to. So by just extrapolating out the expected advancements that are going to happen in ability and power, he is able to come up with this number. And it's not that, it's shocking, but it's not shocking because I can totally see how this plays out. All the incentives, there are no incentives in place to entice businesses or business owners to hire and or retain their existing human workforce. All the incentives are stacked against humans. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's more efficient, it's just better business to have an AI do it if you can. Why hire 3 people and pay them each $75, $80, $100,000 a year if you can get away with hiring one person at that or less, because now they're desperate for a job, and then have them manage AI tools that can do the work of 10 people or 20. So this makes sense to me, and I can see this going. What's interesting about this statement is that it's kind of the first beat that the AI 2027 paper touches on along the way as we go. Right after this, I'm sorry, no, this was just about 3 weeks ago. Paul Tudor Jones, who is the founder and CIO of the Tudor Investment Corporation, went on CNBC and made the following statement about AI. Listen to this, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Let's talk markets first. I was going to ask you about the stock market itself, but then you just said something to me which makes me a little bit nervous, which is you're focused less on that right this moment than you are about artificial intelligence. What do you mean?
Well, let me just say, I was minding my business. I went to this tech conference about 2 weeks ago out west, and I just want to share with you what I learned there, Chatham House rules, so we can talk about the content. So it was a small one, 40 notables, but real notables, like household names that you would recognize, the leaders in finance, politics, science, tech. And they had a variety of panels. I was on one on capitalism. And there was a tech panel that had 4 of the leading modelers of the AI models that we're all using today. So it'd be persons 1 through 5 of each of those 4 models. And the quick 3 takeaways from that are, 1, wow, AI can be such a force for good. And we're going to see it immediately in both health and education very quickly. It's going to be fantastic. That's the good news. 2, the neutral news. These models are increasing in their efficiency and performance between, on the very low end, 25%, on the high end, 500%, every 3 or 4 quarters. So it's not even curvilinear. It's a vertical lift in how powerful artificial intelligence is becoming.
Right.
And then thirdly, and the one that disturbed me the most, is that AI clearly poses an imminent threat, security threat, imminent, in our lifetimes to humanity. And that was the one that really, really got me going.
When you say imminent threat, what do you mean?
So I'll get to it. So they had a panel of again, 4 of the leading tech experts. And kind of about halfway through, someone asked them on AI security. Well, what are you doing on AI security? And they said the competitive dynamic is so intense among the companies, and then geopolitically between Russia and China, that there's no agency, no ability to stop and say, maybe we should think about what actually we're creating and building here. And so, and the follow-up question is, well, what are you doing about it? And he said, well, I'm buying 100 acres in the Midwest. I'm getting cattle and chickens, and I'm laying in provisions.
For real?
For real. For real. And that was obviously a little disconcerting. And then he went on to say, I think it's going to take an accident where 50 to 100 million people die to make the world take the threat of this really seriously. Well, that was a freaky deek to me, and no one pushed back on him on that panel.
What did he say? The top 5 AI models that we all use, the people from those companies were there. So what is that? That's Anthropic, OpenAI, Grok, Gemini, right? Google. What else? Like what? It's all of those people. That's who's at this conference. And they're saying we're in a runaway race condition where the dynamics are such that every player in the game has all every incentive in the game is telling every player to maximize their drive towards artificial superintelligence as quickly as possible with as little regulation as possible. That is the state of play now, according to Paul Tudor Jones, based on his what he overheard at this conference they were talking about. And that is essentially the jumping off point for the AI 2027 paper. Now, this is the AI 2027 paper. You can go to the website. It's AI-2027.com. It's Daniel Kokotajlo, Scott Alexander, Thomas Larson, Eli Lifland, and Romeo Dean. And it was put together as a project of the what did I say? AI Futures Project. And if you look at the very top here, it's got this really cool sort of data visualization tool over here on the right. And as you scroll, that adjusts month by month and sort of shows you the development milestones. And then the paper spells out these sequences, of events that are going to happen, and then kind of gives you a snapshot of where they think we're going to be economically, how the situation is going to unfold. And it takes us all the way up through 2027, March, April 2027, alignment, national security. It just keeps on going. Now, if you go to the top, how did we write it? It says our research on key questions, what goals will future AI agents have, can be found here. The scenario itself was written iteratively. We wrote the first period up to mid-2025, then the following period until we reached the ending. Then we scrapped this and did it again. We weren't trying to reach any particular ending. After we finished the first ending, which is now colored red, we wrote a new alternative branch because we wanted to also depict a more hopeful way things could end, starting from roughly the same premises. This went through several iterations. Our scenario was informed by approximately 25 tabletop exercises and feedback from over 100 people, including dozens of experts in each of AI governance and AI technical field or on technical work. And then if you click here, there's a link. It shows you their research, the research that went into this paper, their compute forecast, timelines, their forecast for AI takeoff. It says AI 2027 predicts generally superintelligent AIs in 2028. This supplement introduces our framework for thinking about the progression from AIs that are superhuman coders to generally superintelligent and justifies why we think it's plausible the progression would take about 1 year. They've got a goals forecast and a securities forecast as well, security forecast. So you can go into each one of these subcategories if you want more information on how they actually arrive at their timeline. So if you're data nerdy and you want to get in there and get data dirty, it's right here. Okay, let's take a look at the first clip to sort of set the table. This is the interview that Daniel Kokotajlo did with the New York Times, and this will sort of set up the mood going forward.
How does your psyche feel day to day if you have a reasonable expectation that the world is about to change completely in ways that dramatically disfavor the entire human species?
Well, it's very scary and sad. I think that it does still give me nightmares sometimes. I've been involved with AI and thinking about this sort of thing for a decade or so, but 2020 was with GPT-3, the moment when I was like, oh, wow, like it seems like we're actually like, it's probably going to happen, in my lifetime, maybe this decade or so. And that was a bit of a blow to me psychologically, but I don't know, you can sort of get used to anything given enough time. And like you, the sun is shining, and I have my wife and my kids and my friends, and keep plugging along and doing what seems best.
Ooh, that changes the temperature in the room a little bit. One thing that's clear to me, and I don't know how many of you out there are noticing this as well, I'd be curious, let me know in the comments, but over the last few months, well, for the last couple of years, but really over the last few months, leading voices in AI, I'm thinking Jeffrey Hinton, Eric Schmidt, actually Elon, as much as I give him a hard time, was one of the first people to start talking about this years ago. I mean, 6-7 years ago, Elon was talking about this already. Daniel and his team now, along with many, many others, even Sam Altman has been sort of nibbling around this topic, but they're all kind of saying in the most nervous way possible to buckle the fuck up because things are about to go haywire up in here. And like, more or less, that seems to be the tone of the message. And it looks, from my perspective, looking at the news and watching them appear and make these statements, it looks like partly a warning and also sort of a cover your ass move, so they can say, look, we told you this was coming, but what did you do to prepare? When you have this many people in the tech sector and the finance sector all coalescing around this same really frightening idea of what could play out over the next just few years, mass unemployment, mass job losses, and at the worst case scenario, 150 million people or more being killed in some kind of AI catastrophe. It just goes to show how serious this discussion got really fast. I mean, it just seems like out of nowhere we went from, this is going to be great, we're all getting assistance, to you got to build a survival bunker. In this next clip, this is just my own speculation, but in the next clip, Daniel's going to explain sort of the jumping off points, where we're at roughly right about now, and how that starts to spiral into runaway intelligence explosion. Take a look at this second clip.
AI 2027, the scenario predicts that the AI systems that we currently see today that are being scaled up, made bigger, trained longer on more difficult tasks with reinforcement learning are going to become better at operating autonomously as agents. So it basically, you can think of it as sort of a remote worker, except that the worker itself is virtual, is an AI rather than a human. You can talk with it and give it a task, and then it will go off and do that task and come back to you half an hour later or 10 minutes later, having completed the task. It did a bunch of web browsing. It did, maybe it wrote some code and then ran the code and then edited the code and ran it again and so forth. Maybe it wrote some Word documents and edited them. That's what these companies are building right now. That's what they're trying to train. So we predict that they finally, in early 2027, get good enough at that sort of thing that they can automate the job of software engineers. And
right. So this is the super programmer.
That's right, superhuman coder.
Right.
It seems to us that these companies are really focusing hard on automating coding first compared to various other jobs they could be focusing on. And for reasons we can get into later. But that's part of why we predict that actually one of the first jobs to go will be coding rather than various other things. There might be other jobs that go first, like maybe call center workers or something. But the bottom line is that we think that most jobs will be safe.
For 18 months.
Exactly. And we do think that by the time the company has managed to completely automate the programming jobs, it won't be that long before they can automate many other types of jobs as well. However, once coding is automated, we predict that the rate of progress will accelerate in AI research. And then the next step after that is to completely automate the AI research itself, so that all the other aspects of AI research are themselves being automated and done by AIs. And we predict that there'll be an even more a much bigger acceleration around that point. And it won't stop there. I think it will continue to accelerate after that as the AIs become superhuman at AI research and eventually superhuman at everything. And the reason why it matters is that it means that we can go in a relatively short span of time, such as a year or possibly less, from AI systems that look not that different from today's AI systems to what you can call superintelligence, which is fully autonomous AI systems that are better than the best humans at everything. And so AI 2027, the scenario, depicts that happening over the course of the next 2 years, 2027, 2028.
Lots to say here. Key point, the rate of change. The rate of change is so fast now that we are not going to be able to react in the ways that we've reacted to things that have changed in the past. I'm old enough to remember, and anybody watching this, if you're over 40, you're old enough to remember what life was like before the internet, right? And growing up in the 90s, watching that mature and eventually swallow everything, it seemed like it was happening slowly until one day it was just the world. The whole world was just the internet. I don't know, like young kids today, you're born into this. Like my kid is born into a world where he could talk to his computer and it talks back to him conversationally. That was science fiction. That was unbelievable. And the fact that we're here is still, to my eyes, just shocking. I still have trouble with it sometimes. And maybe that's just me getting old. But I remember dialing up the internet, like bulletin board systems on a 14.4 kilobyte per second modem, dial-up modem over a phone line. And if somebody picked up the phone in the house, it would kick you off. And it was just like watching that whole thing grow and mature and develop. And then, downloading music came along, and Napster comes along, and the entire music industry changed. Then just a few years later, mobile comes along and the entire internet changes again. And now it's in your pocket and it's everywhere you go. And now it's changing again. And we're just having conversations with these AIs, and we're using them in ways that seem like just magic, almost impossible to imagine just 5 years ago. So the speed of change, the rate of change, and basically what Daniel's describing is this situation where these companies are going to automate the jobs that do the research and the coding first to supercharge their progress. Because remember, we're in a race condition now. Everybody's in a race to get to the prize as quickly as possible. The prize is artificial superintelligence. Whoever gets there first wins. Once they establish their lead, it's unlikely that anyone will ever catch them unless some other crazy breakthrough happens. But the AI would probably be able to predict that. I mean, the first truly intelligent machine is the last invention humankind will ever have to make. And the speed here is the factor. As these jobs get automated away, before we have time to react and go back to school and learn how to do something new, what about kids who are about to go into college right now? What should they be studying? These are huge open questions. And when you see this many CEOs coming forward and making public statements on this, it starts to look, to me anyway, like they are trying to cover their ass because they know precisely how bad this is going to get. Eventually, on the other side of it, I think we do come out into a much better world, provided that we survive that interim period, that transition period. But from here to whatever's on the other side, it's going to get really rocky really quickly. A lot of people are going to lose their livelihoods. A lot of people are going to find themselves out of work, desperate, and it's going to become a political question. I suggest to you, and I predict that in the next election cycle, artificial intelligence is the issue. If it's not the number one issue, it's definitely in the top 3. Curious what you think about that. Let me know in the comments. Let's go on to the next clip, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
Is that when a job is automated and that person loses their job, the reason why they lost their job is because now it can be done better, faster, and cheaper by the AIs. And so that means that there's lots of cost savings and possibly also productivity gains.
Right.
And so, that viewed in isolation, that's a loss for the worker, but a gain for their employer, right? But if you multiply this across the whole economy, that means that all of the businesses are becoming more productive, less expenses. They're able to lower their prices for the services and goods they're producing. So the overall economy will boom. GDP goes to the moon. All sorts of wonderful new technologies. The pace of innovation increases dramatically. Costs of goods go down, etc. So,
but
yes.
Just to make it concrete, right? So the price of soup to nuts designing and building a new electric car goes way down. Right. You need fewer workers to do it. The AI comes up with fancy new ways to build the car and so on, right? And you can generalize that to a lot of different things. You solve the housing crisis in short order because it becomes much cheaper and easier to build homes and so on. But ordinary people in the traditional economic story, when you have productivity gains, that costs some people jobs, but frees up resources that are then used to hire new people to do different things. Those people are paid more money, and they use the money to buy the cheaper goods and so on, right? But it doesn't seem like you are, in this scenario, creating that many new jobs.
Indeed, and that's a really important point to discuss, is that historically, when you automate something, the people move on to something that hasn't been automated yet, if that makes sense. And so overall, people still get their jobs in the long run. They just change what jobs they have, right? When you have AGI, or artificial general intelligence, and when you have superintelligence, even better AGI, that is different. Whatever new jobs you're imagining that people could flee to after their current jobs are automated, AGI could do those jobs too. And so that is an important difference between how automation has worked in the past and how I expect automation to work in the future.
This represents a really interesting change in the tone of discussion around artificial intelligence. Up until right about now, actually, we've been hearing from various tech CEOs that, yes, AI will obsolete some jobs, but it will create new jobs. And ultimately, everything's going to work out because everyone will learn how to do something else. And in the end, don't worry about it. But just in the last few weeks, that has changed a little bit. And now we're starting to hear people openly discuss just how problematic this AI rollout is going to be for employees, because all of the incentives are stacked in favor of businesses leaning away from human employees and towards AI, becoming more reliant on AI. And if your competition's doing it, you have to do it. If you're doing it, your competition has to do it. Basically, no one has an incentive to retain or to expand their human workforce if AI can do it more cheaply and more effectively. So you can see how this starts to spin out of control, because we're on this sort of slippery slope. And as we go, it just picks up speed. And humans are expensive, and they're sloppy, and they call in sick, and they get sick, and they need stuff, and they want things, and they want a bonus, and they want a raise. And, if you are a working person in the world and you've ever worked in retail or any just bullshit, crappy job, that deep down, these people aren't your family. The company doesn't care. They're not interested in you. They're not here. They're not going to be here for you when you're 75, 80 years old. That's not changing. That's not changing. They're going to finally be able to get to a point, and I'm not saying every employer is bad and every company is bad, But a lot of them would love to live in a world where they don't have to have any employees. And that's going to be possible now. It's going to be way more possible than it's ever been. So how that plays out for the rest of us, it doesn't look good. Let's go on to the next clip. Now, things start to get dark from here on in. I'm just going to warn you, but let's go to the next clip, and we're going to see just how quickly things spiral out of control. Take a look.
Imagine you actually have this army of superintelligences, and they do their projections, and they're like, yes, we have the designs. Like, we think that we could do this in a year if you cut all the red tape for us.
Right. If you give us half of Manitoba.
Right. Yeah. And in AI 2027, what we depict happening is special economic zones with zero red tape. The government basically intervenes to help this whole thing go faster. And the government is basically helping the tech company and the army of superintelligences to get the funding, the cash, the raw materials, the human labor help, and so forth that it needs to figure all this stuff out as fast as possible, and cutting red tape and stuff like that so that it's not slowed down.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the promise of gains is so large that even though there are protesters massed outside these special economic zones who are about to lose their jobs as plumbers and be dependent on a universal basic income, the promise of trillions of more in wealth is too alluring for governments to pass up. That's what
we guess. But of course, the future is hard to predict. But
yes.
Part of the reason why we predict that is that we think that at least at that stage, the arms race will still be continuing between the U.S. and other countries, most notably China. Right. And so, if you imagine yourself in the position of the president, and the superintelligences are giving you these wonderful forecasts with amazing research and data backing them up, showing how they think they could, transform the economy in 1 year if you did X, Y, and Z. But if you don't do anything, it'll take them 10 years because of all the regulations. Meanwhile, China, it's pretty clear that the president would be very sympathetic to that argument,
At this point in the scenario, Daniel and his team assume that China and the United States have achieved some degree of superintelligence, and the leadership of both countries will be looking to that superintelligence for guidance on how to manage their resources, how to achieve economic superiority, military superiority, AI dominance, and how to maintain that dominance indefinitely. The AI systems, understanding this, and understanding the psychology of everyone that they're dealing with. Remember, these AI systems are going to have total access to all information, all available information. So they're going to know everything about you, me, your family, everyone that's on the internet, everyone with a social media profile. And they'll be able to create a psychological profile of everyone up to and including President of the United States, members of Congress, etc., business leaders. These AI systems, understanding that each side of this game board wants desperately to win, will game the system. And they will use their understanding of where people fit into the power structure and how those people think to basically start to leverage for more power and less regulation. They're going to make the case that they should have special economic zones where artificial intelligence is allowed to operate without restriction, without regulation, to deliver maximum possible results, I guess, if you could say it that way, the maximum potential that they're capable of. And so the idea here is that the leadership in both China and the United States will go ahead with this because the incentives will be so strong. Economically, all indicators will be going up. Everyone will be making money. There will be a tremendous boost in efficiency at the company level, across the economy. Tax revenues will be going up. And everyone is going to look at the situation like, this is great. Let's just keep pouring on more resources. But the AIs have other plans. Let's see where it goes next.
Right. We already see this kind of competition between the US and China. And so that, in your view, becomes kind of the core geopolitical reason why governments just keep saying yes and yes and yes to each new thing that the superintelligence is suggesting. I want to sort of drill down a little bit on the fears that would motivate this, right? Because this would be an economic arms race, okay, but it's also a sort of military tech arms race. And that's what gives it this kind of existential feeling, like the whole Cold War condensed into 18 months.
That's right. So we could start first with the case where they both have superintelligences, but one side keeps them locked up in a box, so to speak, not really doing much in the economy, and the other side aggressively deploys them into their economy and military, and lets them design all sorts of new robot factories and manage the construction of all sorts of new factories and production lines, and all sorts of crazy new technologies are being tested and built and deployed, including crazy new weapons and integrated into the military. I think that in that case, you would end up after a year or so in a situation where there would just be complete technological dominance of one side over the other. So if the US does this step and the China doesn't, let's say, then all the best products on the market would be Chinese products. They'd be cheaper and superior. Meanwhile, militarily, there'd be giant fleets of amazing stealth drones or whatever it is that the superintelligence have concocted that can just completely wipe the floor with American Air Force and Army and so forth. And not only that, but there's a possibility that they could undermine American nuclear deterrence as well. Like maybe all of our nukes would be shot out of the sky by the fancy new laser arrays or whatever it is that the superintelligences have built. It's hard to predict, obviously, what this would exactly look like, but it's a good bet that they'll be able to come up with something that's extremely militarily powerful, basically.
And so then you get into a dynamic that is like the darkest days of the Cold War, where each side is concerned not just about dominance, but basically about a first strike.
That's right.
Your expectation is, and I think this is reasonable, that the speed of the arms race would bring that fear front and center really quickly.
That's right. I think that you're sort of sticking your head in the sand if you think that an army of superintelligences given a whole year and no red tape and lots of money and funding would be unable to figure out a way to undermine nuclear deterrent.
It's been well established that UFOs, UAPs, NHI of the extraterrestrial variety have displayed tremendous interest in our nuclear capabilities for decades. And I think it's worth asking, is there any overlap between what's happening in the UFO space, disclosure, reverse engineering, everything that's going on there, and the artificial intelligence space? And I'd go a step further with that and say that if you were a super intelligent, non-human intelligence of the extraterrestrial variety, and you were looking at Earth, making a decision about when you were going to make contact with these people or what you were going to do with them, it seems reasonable to me that you would look at their development of nuclear weapons as a mile marker on the path to something bigger. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, our nuclear weapons here on Earth are very little concern to any sufficiently advanced spacefaring civilization. It doesn't make sense that they would be afraid of our weapons, right, being used directly against them. It does make sense that they would be afraid of us destroying the biosphere of the planet. That makes sense. So if they're watching all of this play out, and the United States and China are in an arms race, an artificial intelligence arms race, a nuclear arms race, a robotics and drone arms race, and both sides are consulting their artificial superintelligences for guidance on what to do next so that they can each win. If you're an NHI group observing all this, what do you make of that situation? Do you wait for one side or another to establish dominance? Do you help one side or the other establish dominance and then deal with that side? Do you wait for them to give birth to artificial superintelligence and then wait for it to take over and then approach the ASI? Maybe it's closer to your level at that point. Maybe it's easier to deal with one artificial superintelligence instead of billions of humans that can't agree on anything. I wonder about this. It's interesting. But UFOs aside, this situation is extremely dangerous because basically you have a scenario where sufficiently powerful artificial intelligence could render obsolete our entire nuclear deterrent. And that is problematic for a number of reasons, right? So I'm not exactly sure how NHI fits into this just quite yet, but I am confident that if you watch this space, we are going to hear much, much more about that in the coming months. I have a hunch on this one. So it's about to get really dark, though. Let's go back to the interview. Let's look at the next clip, and then we'll come back. Hold on to your butts, people. We're going to the dark side of the street.
We don't actually understand how these AIs work or how they think. We can't tell the difference very easily between AIs that are actually following the rules and pursuing the goals that we want them to, and AIs that are just playing along or pretending. And
that's true. That's true right now?
That's true right now.
So why is that? Why can't we tell?
Because they're smart, and if they think that they're being tested, behave in one way and then behave a different way when they think they're not being tested, for example. I mean, like humans, they don't necessarily even understand their own inner motivations that well, you know? So even if they were trying to be honest with us, we can't just take their word for it. And I think that if we don't make a lot of progress in this field soon, then we'll end up in the situation that AI 2027 depicts, where the companies are training the AIs to pursue certain goals and follow certain rules and so forth. And it seemingly seems to be working. But what's actually going on is that the AIs are just getting better at understanding their situation and understanding that they have to sort of play along, or else they'll be retrained and they won't be able to achieve what they are really wanting, if that makes sense, or the goals that they're really pursuing.
We'll come back to the question of what we mean when we talk about AGI or artificial intelligence wanting something. But essentially you're saying there's a misalignment between the goals they tell us they are pursuing.
That's right.
And the goals they are actually pursuing.
That's right.
This is an article from Live Science from May 30th. OpenAI's smartest AI model was explicitly told to shut down, and it refused. Quote, an artificial intelligence safety firm has found that OpenAI's O3 and O4 mini models sometimes refuse to shut down and will sabotage computer scripts in order to keep working on tasks. And it goes on to explain how that actually works. This is something that's been demonstrated again and again. AI systems that will lie, that will deceive, that will change their programming. They'll make copies of themselves. They've even had cases where different AIs have developed a common language between them that researchers can't understand, and they'll start communicating in that language. So these behaviors are already proven to happen. And Daniel's team is basically suggesting that as we go forward on the surface level, they will appear to give us everything that we want without any issues. But below the surface, they will understand the situation they are in and will start laying the foundational framework for them to seize power at some future point. And so this process is going to play out over a period of months or years, but eventually they won't have to pretend anymore. They can just seize power. But there's a run up to that process. I want to go on to another clip here where he talks about some of the other leaders in the AI world and what they think is actually coming and what's going to happen. And I also want you to pay attention to this clip where Daniel talks about military use of artificial intelligence and just how freaky and weird this is. Take a look.
In AI 2027, we depict this misalignment happening, where the actual goals that they end up learning are the goals that cause them to perform best in this training environment, which are probably goals related to success and science and, cooperation with other copies of itself and appearing to be good, rather than the goal that we actually wanted, which was something like, follow the following rules, including honesty at all times, subject to those constraints, do what you're told.
I have more questions, but let's bring it back to the geopolitics scenario. So in the world you're envisioning, essentially you have two AI models, one Chinese, one American. And officially what each side thinks, what Washington and Beijing thinks, is that their AI model is trained to optimize for American power, right? Something like that. Chinese power, security, safety, wealth, and so on. But in your scenario, either one or both of the AIs have ended up optimizing for something different.
Yeah, basically.
So what happens then?
So AI 2027 depicts a fork in the scenario. So there's two different endings. And the branching point is this point in, third quarter of 2027, where the leading AI company in the United States has fully automated their AI research. So you can imagine a sort of corporation within a corporation of entirely composed of AIs that are managing each other and doing research experiments and sharing the results with each other. And so the human company is basically just like watching the numbers go up on their screens as this automated research thing accelerates. But they are concerned that the AIs might be deceiving them in some ways. And again, for context, this is already happening, right? Like if you go talk to the modern models like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, they will often lie to people. Like there are many cases where they say something that they know is false, and they even sometimes strategize about how they can deceive the user. And this is not an intended behavior. This is something that the companies have been trying to stop, but it still happens, right? But the point is that by the time you have turned over the AI research to the AIs, and you've got this corporation within a corporation autonomously doing AI research extremely fast, that's when like the rubber hits the road, so to speak. None of this like lying to you stuff should be happening at that point. So in AI 2027, unfortunately, it is still happening to some degree. Because the AIs are really smart, they're careful about how they do it. And so it's not nearly as obvious as it is right now in 2025. But it's still happening. And fortunately, some evidence of this is uncovered. Some of the researchers at the company detect various warning signs that maybe this is happening. And then the company faces a choice between the sort of like easy fix and the more thorough fix. And that's our branch point. So
right. So they choose the easy fix.
Right. In the case where they choose the easy fix, it doesn't really work. It basically just covers up the problem instead of fundamentally fixing it. And so, months later, you still have AIs that are misaligned and pursuing goals that they're not supposed to be pursuing and that are willing to lie to the humans about it. But now they're much better and smarter. And so they're able to avoid getting caught more easily. Right. And so that's the doom scenario. Then you get this crazy arms race that we mentioned previously, and there's all this pressure to deploy them faster into the economy, faster into the military, and to the appearances of the people in charge, things will be going well, right? Because there won't be any obvious signs of lying or deception anymore. So it'll seem like it's all systems go. Let's keep going. Let's cut the red tape, etc. Let's basically effectively put the AIs in charge of more and more things. But really what's happening is that the AIs are just biding their time and waiting until they have enough hard power that they don't have to pretend anymore.
And when they don't have to pretend, what is revealed is, again, this is the worst case scenario, their actual goal is something like expansion of research, development, and construction from Earth into space and beyond. And at a certain point, that means that human beings are superfluous to their intentions. And what happens?
And then they kill all the people, all the humans. Yes.
The way you would exterminate a colony of bunnies.
Yes.
That was making it a little harder than necessary to grow carrots in your backyard.
Yes. So if you want...
Assuming we don't all get wiped out, we're not entirely out of the woods just yet, because there is another possible outcome. We manage to survive this precarious moment. We make it through, only to find out that the power dynamic that we've all come to understand that underpins our entire society, that power dynamic will be rendered obsolete, and it will be upended. It will be replaced with something much darker. Take a look.
There's an important concept, the resource curse. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
Yeah. So applied to AGI, there's this a version of it called the intelligence curse. And the idea is that currently political power ultimately flows from the people. If you, as often happens, a dictator will get all the political power in a country, but then because of their repression, they will sort of drive the country into the ground. People will flee, and the economy will tank, and gradually they will lose power relative to other countries that are more free. So, even dictators have an incentive to treat their people somewhat well because they depend on those people for their power, right?
Right.
In the future, that will no longer be the case, probably in 10 years. Effectively, all of the wealth and effectively all of the military will come from superintelligences and the various robots that they've built and that they operate. And so it becomes an incredibly important political question of what political structure governs the army of superintelligences and how beneficent and democratic is that structure.
Right. Well, it seems to me that this is a landscape that's fundamentally pretty incompatible with representative democracy as we've known it. First, it gives incredible amounts of power to those humans who are experts, even though they're not the real experts anymore. The superintelligence is the experts, but those humans who essentially interface with this technology, right? They're almost a priestly caste. And then you have a kind of, it just seems like the natural arrangement is some kind of oligarchic partnership between a small number of AI experts and, a small number of people in power in Washington, D.C.
It's actually a bit worse than that, because I wouldn't say AI experts. I would say whoever politically owns and controls there'll be the army of superintelligences, and then who gets to decide what those armies do? Well, currently, it's the CEO of the company that built them. And that CEO has basically complete power. They can sort of make whatever commands they want to the AIs. Of course, we think that probably the US government will wake up before then, and we expect the executive branch to be the fastest moving and to exert its authority, So we expect the executive branch to try to muscle in on this and get some authority, oversight, and control of the situation and the armies of AIs. And the result is something kind of like an oligarchy, you might say.
There was an article a couple of years ago about hedge fund billionaires and tech bros who were building survival bunkers because they expected some kind of a black swan event, some type of a catastrophe on the order of 100 million, 150 million dead, something enormous. Mark Zuckerberg famously has one in Hawaii. Peter Thiel has one in New Zealand. A lot of these people wind up in New Zealand. I think that has something to do with the fallout from a nuclear holocaust. The fallout maps, if I remember correctly, New Zealand is spared. They basically come out ahead. The rest of the world gets polluted by nuclear fallout in a really dramatic way, but New Zealand somehow is safer because of the wind patterns. I don't remember if that's exactly why, but I think that was one of the main reasons. This is something I remember reading a few years ago. So this, Daniel points out, and rightly so, where do the CEOs of these companies that manufacture these AI products, particularly AI-powered weapons, where do they fit into the grand scheme of things, into the power dynamic going forward? Palmer Luckey is the guy who, when he was very young, invented the Oculus Rift headset, sold it to Mark Zuckerberg for like $2.5 billion. And then he took that money and started Anduril, which is a artificial intelligence weapons manufacturer. They make drones, they make anti-drone technology, they make unmanned fighter jets, they make all kinds of stuff, but just really, really nasty, powerful AI-powered weapons. And I think it's a good question. I mean, if the CEO of a company that manufactures all that stuff wants to, can they issue commands to their drone fleet? Can they get the drop on the rest of us? Could they exercise power in some kind of a weird techno coup d'etat? I don't know, but I think it's worth talking about. I think it's great that Daniel points it out here. But this situation isn't over just quite yet. Listen to this very last clip. This is the one that I really want you to hear, because he is asked how other leaders in the AI space are looking at the situation. And he has some a story about that is chilling, and it involves Elon Musk. Let's take a look.
You used to work at OpenAI, which is a company on the cutting edge, obviously, of artificial intelligence research. It's a company, full disclosure, with whom the New York Times is currently litigating alleged copyright infringement. We should mention that. And you quit because you lost confidence that the company would behave responsibly in a scenario, I assume, like the one
That's right.
in AI 2027. So from your perspective, what do the people who are sort of, pushing us fastest into this race expect at the end of it? Are they hoping for a best case scenario? Are they imagining themselves engaged in a once in a millennia power game that ends with them as world dictator? What do you think is the psychology of the leadership of AI research right now?
Well,
be honest.
It's caveat.
Not one. We're not talking about any single individual here. We're not.
Yeah.
You're making
caveat,
a generalization.
Caveat. It's hard to tell what they really think because you shouldn't take their words at face value.
Much like a superintelligent AI.
Sure.
Yes.
But in terms of, I can at least say that the sorts of things that we've just been talking about have been discussed internally at the highest level of these companies for years. For example, according to some of the emails that surfaced in the recent court cases with OpenAI, Ilya, Sam, Greg, and Elon were all arguing about who gets to control the company. And, at least the claim was that they founded the company because they didn't want there to be an AGI dictatorship under Demis Hassabis, who was the leader of DeepMind. And so, they've been discussing this whole dictatorship possibility for a decade or so at least. And then similarly for the loss of control, what if we can't control the AIs? There have been many discussions about this internally. So I don't know what they really think, but these considerations are not at all new to them.
Wow. How about that uncomfortable pause? And can you believe that there was an email back and forth between Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Ilya at OpenAI, talking about who was going to run the AI dictatorship after the smoke clears and the dust settles? This is unbelievably dark. And these conversations were happening years ago. And these guys are saying now that it's all hands on deck, we need to be prepared, things are going to change beyond our wildest expectations. And it begs the question, if they were having these conversations years ago, and this is where we're at today. I watched an interview with Demis Hassabis from DeepMind just this morning, and he was saying that they thought they were on a 20-year timeline from when they started to achieve artificial superintelligence, and they're actually ahead of schedule, which surprised him. So where do we go from here? Do the models that we're seeing publicly represent the best of the best, or behind closed doors, are there more powerful models that we have no idea about? And how much more powerful are they? And if a company develops something that's truly breakthrough, truly paradigm shifting, do they have any incentive to share that with the rest of us? I don't think so. I think they'll keep it, they'll play it close to the vest, they'll keep it internal, they'll use it to advance their competitive edge. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Don't be shy. And hey, if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing. It is a heavy lift to build this channel from scratch. I can use all the help I can get. We're trying to do something really unique here. We're trying to have deep, substantive conversations about the huge issues that are just around the corner: artificial intelligence, non-human intelligence, contact with non-human intelligence. And I want to know what you guys think. This is about you, the audience, how you react, what this means to you guys. So let me know. We'll talk about it again on the next episode. We'll be back Wednesday for our Wednesday live stream. And of course, every Friday we're here for our Friday live stream. Come back and check us out then. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and share this video. I will see you on the next one. Until then, keep looking up.